Yeah, it's good to be here. I want to talk tonight about listening to music and how it's changed over the last 50 years or so. And I would love to talk to each of you about how you listen to music, because it's such a fascinating topic, whether you just sit and listen or whether you multitask. My husband, for instance, is the kind of person who can be watching a movie, working on 2 computers, listening to, Philip Glass, and watching Iron Man for the 20th time, and sort of, he does many things simultaneously. I can't do that.
He's from New York.
He is from New York.
I know him. It's easy.
Okay. So I grew up with classical music, and it was just required that you sit in your seat and listen, and you don't move, and you just sit quietly, still. And I sometimes wonder if that's the best way to listen to music. So I was reading this really great essay by the great novelist E.M. Forster. And he has an essay called Not Listening to Music. He's sitting in the concert hall, being perfectly still. He says, "During the greater part of every performance, I do not attend. The nice sounds make me think of something else. I wool gather most of the time, and I'm surprised that others don't." So he looks at the singer's chin, or he looks at the pianist's mannerisms, or he looks at a spot on the ceiling, or he thinks about what he's going to have for dinner later on. So sitting in a concert hall doesn't necessarily promote intensive listening. When I was growing up, I had 2 ways to listen to music, and one was with my little record player. Let's see. I have a little record player there. So I had one of these little things. Maybe I'm probably older than many of you in the audience, but I grew up with one of these, and it's a very kind of private, wonderful, intimate way to listen to music, where I had the Brahms F minor piano quintet on this little record player, and I would just listen to it over and over and over until it wore out the grooves. Rudolf Serkin and the Busch Quartet. I listened to that over and over. The other way of listening was my father would call me down into the living room, and he'd say, "Now we're going to listen to Mahler's Das Lied von der Erde, and then later I'm going to take you to a performance of it." And he'd sit me down on the sofa, and he'd get out his pipe and put the 78s on the turntable, and they'd drop, like clunk, make the clunking noise, and we just sit and listen. And those are some of my happiest memories, and yet I have on the record. Whereas classical music, there's often not much to see. There's the Alfred Bendel or Richard Good or whoever, Mitsuko Uchida sitting at the piano, and not much visually happening, but it's all about the aural, A-U-R-A-L, experience, listening. So a little bit about what I do now, that Piero did this nice introduction. So one of the things I do is organize this concert at the Chapel of the Chimes in Oakland, which is a big columbarium. This gives you a sense of some of it. It's designed by Julie Morgan. It's sort of labyrinthine, and there are these little gardens. So this is a musician named Laura Insera, and a lot of people love to come hear her. And what you do is you just walk around and come across the musical performances one by one. So I put about 40 different groups and musicians around the building, and they're performing simultaneously. And Julie Morgan designed this building so that each of these spaces is self-contained acoustically and visually, so that you make your way, you discover a performance like Laura's, and then you can go somewhere else. Everybody is trying to think of how to get more people to listen to classical music, new music, which is what I do now, mostly contemporary music. I work with composers. How do you get an audience for new music? This is a really good way, because about 2,200 people came when we did it on June 21st, which was just a couple weeks ago. It's a successful event, partly because you don't have to sit still. You can walk around. There's this incredible visual stimuli. It's sort of stimulating in all stimulates all your senses. I mean, there are gardenias in bloom. It's just a great event. You bump into friends you haven't seen all year. But it's not the listening experience that going to Hertz Hall or Davies Hall, listening to a great classical performer. This isn't necessarily the best space for that. It's good if you there are people playing kelp instruments or instruments made of water, things like that. So there's a lot of experimental music. What I love about this event is that it sort of equalizes everybody, so that the famous people are on the same level. I mean, you encounter them in the same way that you encounter the sort of emerging performers, young performers. There are some teenagers. So everybody's equal. There are improv people. You can come across someone doing computer music, and if you were the kind of person who'd say, I would never, ever, ever go to a computer music performance, I would just stay away from that completely, you might just come across it here, discover something, and without knowing what it is, say, wow, that's really beautiful, and I want to hear more of that person's music. So that's a great event for discovering. Another thing, I don't know why I have so many pictures of Terry Riley, except that I love him. Terry Riley invented minimalism in music back in 1965 with a seminal piece called In C. So Terry Riley comes every year to the Berkeley Art Museum, and I get to curate one concert a month in the so-called LATE series. That's L@TE at the Berkeley Art Museum, and this is Gallery B, which is down below. So it's acoustically, you wouldn't think piano music would work there, but Terry Riley can make it work. And so we move in a Piedmont piano, gives us a Fazioli piano, and here he is playing with his son Gian. So what happened here is that I asked Terry to recreate one of his all-night concerts from the 60s. So in the 60s he would do these all-night concerts where he just play music all night long. People would bring their families, they'd bring sleeping bags, and just lie down on the floor. And this is, to me, a great way to listen to music. I mean, how often have we been in a concert hall and we're sitting in our seat and we really want to just lie down? I just think that's so, I mean, it would be so nice to get a sleeping bag and a pillow and just kind of relax and not necessarily fall asleep, but just be in that receptive state for listening to music. So this worked really well, and it was really amazing because I think it was almost midnight, and people were lying in their sleeping bags and blankets and pillows and camping pads, and Terry, when he stopped playing, everyone jumped to their feet and gave him a standing ovation, and it was like a very dramatic moment. So this is, Terry Riley at the Berkeley Art Museum. So this works really well for listening. I think this series is successful. And again, people come to hear things that I don't think they'd hear in a concert hall, like Ellen Fullman with her long string instrument, various handmade instruments or experimental instruments that some people would otherwise stay away from. But it works because you can walk around, you can see from different points of view. Here's another. See, this is what the audience looked like. Again, I don't know why I have so many pictures of Terry Riley, but so this is from one of the balconies above. You can get different perspectives. You can look at the artwork on the walls. So that's a great thing. Oh, I put in Le Poisson Rouge in New York because, as I say, everybody has been trying to find a way to present music that's conducive to relaxed listening, people having a good time, bringing people in, not having them necessarily sit in the concert hall. So this is one example of a successful place where it's more like a club. So you can sit sort of like SF Jazz, the new SF Jazz. You can sit and have something to eat. The only problem with this is that they mic the piano, which I don't really like. And the last time I played there, I said, could we not mic the piano? Could it just be acoustic? And they said, no, because if you have the piano just be acoustic, then people sitting at the bar think that there's nothing going on, and then they start talking really loudly. But this is also great because they combine classical people with pop music and sort of avant-garde with rock and roll, and so the audiences merge. I mean, these tiny audiences and these big audiences, you know, to sort of bring them together, and that's a great thing. So I'd like to do a little exercise which involves a piece of music that I'd like to play, and it's by Henry Purcell. It's performed by the great viola da gamba player Jordi Savall and some of his friends. Hesperian 20, now called Hesperian 21. And I just want to play this little Henry Purcell Fantasia, which is 3 minutes long, just as an experiment in sitting and again, I don't know how many of us are used to just sitting and listening to a 3-minute piece of music. I know my 15-year-old daughter, Miranda, thinks that if a song goes on more than a minute, it's way too long. So let's just listen to Jordi Savall. And I guess I also want to say that when you listen to a piece of music this way, I think it becomes like this little microcosm. Like you live through it in a way you don't when you're distracted by something else. So you can close your eyes if you want or not. But we'll listen to, how do I do this? Uh-oh.